what I see is that because of their ability to be really fast and dynamic and their rootlessness, we're all obsessed with what Americans are doing because they're really great at like production and doing stuff quickly. And, there's just like so much happening and it's a very big
Yeah,
market as well. So they have lots of resources. So we're just obsessed with Americans, and
yeah,
everything that's happening there. And it's terrible. It's terrible because I actually believe that's a very large part of the problem. So when we're looking at trying to find solutions, we're all looking to what the Americans are doing. And I
yeah.
actually think like the solutions are going to be more found here in the old world more than in the new world
The new
over there.
world. Yeah.
We are live. Thomas Finn, good to have you on.
Thanks for having me. So
Yeah.
pleased to be here. Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah, so
inviting.
it's not often that I realize or discover that there's another Danish guy out there producing a whole lot of material and content and conversations, much longer than mine even. I do long conversations,
Yeah.
like doing 3.5 hour conversations about men and masculinity for quite some time now, right? How long have you been going for, actually?
I started the podcast back in, I think, September, no, October 2020. But the topic has interested me ever since 2002, 2003. And I thought after 17 years, I might have something to say. Maybe I learned something about, along the way that other people could use, or I could at least, that was my hope. I could at least have conversations where I could ask questions to people whom I thought were more knowledgeable than me.
Yeah.
So I could have meaningful conversations with people. And
Yeah.
you are right, they are too long, and I'm much too interested in um,
Details and nitty-gritty stuff and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it
we've just
maybe
been talking for what, actually over half an hour now before we got started. And we just
yeah,
found our lives have always been mirroring each other, very much so like David Data and getting into the manosphere. Jordan
yeah,
Peterson comes along,
yeah,
opening up to this idea of like, oh, there's this Christianity stuff. And I've been told my whole life that's all rubbish, but maybe there's something there. And
exactly,
so I
yeah,
was
yeah,
quite
yeah.
impressed to discover or amazed to discover actually that I didn't realize you were a Christian as
No, but I
well.
am, yeah, yeah,
But
but
you
I
are,
am,
as am
yeah.
I.
One day I woke up and I thought to myself, why the heck is there churches everywhere?
Yeah, Denmark's
There
covered in
must
churches
there
like
must be
everywhere,
a
right?
yeah, there must be a reason there's churches everywhere. What were the people thinking that used to live here? So I started probing into this, and
Yeah, and they're beautiful, right? They're really beautiful, like,
yeah, they
and
are.
they're right in the middle and
Yeah,
at the highest points. Like, there must have
yeah,
been something important about
yeah,
them back then.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I started venturing into this, and that has brought me much joy and a new sense of meaning
Mhm.
and belonging and direction in my life. Discovering Christianity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has been at the tail end of our 15 year, 16-year venture into personal development. So you're saying David Data, but
Mhm.
before David Data, there was Jim Rohn, there was Anthony Robbins, there was lots of other courses or educations that I took around the world, teachers.
Mhm.
I looked into Buddhism for a couple, like every Western
Yeah.
searching for meaning, searching for somewhere to belong.
Mhm.
I was looking at what stuff that was going on in Asia, and when Jordan Peterson, after 1,000 books, popped into my life around 2016, I started asking myself, but is it a coincidence that I'm born here? And if it's not a coincidence, why don't I start looking what's right in front of me instead of looking at the other end of the world for meaning?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that opened up Christianity
And I
for
like
me.
my society as well. I've lived in Thailand. I've lived in India. Like
Yeah,
there's some really fascinating things there in those countries, and they're very exotic and fun, and you
yeah,
can learn about yourself. But like,
yeah.
like people treat each other really bad in India. Like it's a really ugly society in many ways. Like I don't want to live there. I don't want
No,
to like become and it is, culture is formed by these religious beliefs as well, right?
exactly.
So I think
Yeah,
it's a coincidence as well. But Thomas,
yeah.
let's try and keep this. So the topic of what we want to talk about. We're gonna have a hard time staying on track here, I think. But we do want to talk about the Danish manosphere. That's what we want to do with this conversation today. That was what we agreed.
Yeah,
Try and get an understanding of. For me, I've really been thinking about like what does Denmark have to add to the field of like men's work and masculinity and understanding that. And you've been talking to a lot of the people in Denmark.
Mhm.
All the people I know of, at least in Denmark, who are like most knowledgeable on the subject and who are doing like valuable
Yeah.
work, investing time and energy, and you really have really deep and explorative conversations. So that's what I want to try and say. I don't know. Could you try and sum up, like, if you were say, like, what are the things that you've learned? Could you give me like 1 to 3 top things you've learned from your podcast so far?
Um, I think what I have learned the most is that the amount of feminization that the Scandinavian countries has been exposed to, and what that has done to men, as on a bell curve, on a general level for all of us,
Mhm.
is weakening society and leaving men frustrated, depressed, without a sense of meaning. It
Mhm.
leaves women with a whole host of problems because they can't trust and depend on men. And it leaves, in some respect, a lot of children without uh, the role of the father that, in at least in my estimation, a child needs. We were also briefly discussing this before you turned on the podcast. Uh, b- but in my own life, taking full responsibility for my son has been one of the most enlightening ventures I have. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Most expensive in your, like personal investment,
yeah,
and by far the most valuable, like
yeah, exactly.
priceless.
Yeah, valuable is the right word. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, like the return on return on the time that you spend
Yeah,
there is,
yeah,
you can't put, like, I can almost say my son has saved my life, even though he didn't know
yeah.
what he was doing at all. But just
So, so
him being there, knowing that I was his father, and that he depended
yeah,
on me, and realizing that he depended on me.
exactly. So the more that I stepped up into the role of being a father, the more meaningful my life became.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah. No, on this podcast, I don't think we have to be careful in saying, in my opinion,
yeah.
fathers are needed or something like that. Like, that is something that I will state as an absolute truth.
Me
I would
too.
say fatherhood
Me,
is written into the fabric of reality.
yeah,
It's the way things relate to each other, and it's essential. I love this word patriarchy. Sorry to say it, but I say we do live in a patriarchy. I agree with the feminists on that.
yeah,
Society's always been a patriarchy, and
yeah.
fatherhood is beautiful. Even if you're looking at just from a purely biological perspective, even from a Darwinistic perspective, the father that loves and cherishes his children, nurtures them to grow up and be strong.
Mm,
That's the one that's going to thrive the most. And so
exactly,
fatherhood is so important in doing that. That is the role of the father, to do it.
exactly.
So it's essential. It's essential for that to be
I agree,
core.
but Paul, it seems like the culture, and that is, I mean, that is also one of the critiques that I have been hearing a lot, and also one of my own critiques, that it seems like we are treating the father like, it's nice to have, but women can get pregnant by themselves. The state can take the role of the father. The state can take the role of the supplier of money, of security, of so you and I might agree, but the general culture seems to have, like another idea of what is right and what is true.
Yeah.
And I think they are wrong. And I think they are hurting children. I think they are hurting women, and I think they are hurting men. And I think the lack of the good man is what is hurting society these years.
Mhm.
So
Can you say a little bit more when you say you think you're hurting men and you're hurting women? Like,
mhm.
what do you mean by that, and how do you think that's happening, unfolding? I would add to that list children as well, so we can talk about that afterwards. But
Yeah.
mhm.
Uh, so for men, I mean, it's obvious that if you tell men that they can't compete, and that masculinity is somewhere around 2015, some idiot came up with the idea, came up with the term toxic masculinity.
Mhm.
They took it from some psychologist that used it to describe really violent prisoners in American prisons.
Mhm.
But somebody picked up that term and started to inject it into our language and into the press. And if you look at the curve of how many times it's mentioned in newspapers, it's
Mhm.
just from 2016, it just goes up and up.
Exploded, yeah.
So there's a conscious movement. There must be
Mhm.
that pushes this agenda, that pushes these thoughts and this language that is subverting what is true, that is subverting Western culture, that is subverting the ideals and values that 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, we all believed were true.
Mhm.
So that subversion, that flip of ideals, flip of values is hurting men. You also hear not just toxic masculinity, but what is toxic masculinity? Nobody knows. If you ask anybody what is toxic masculinity, they would just say general masculine things. Oh,
Mhm.
men working out, men being men, men brawling, men telling jokes, men being naughty, men being uh, uh, supposedly too much.
Mhm.
Men cannot be men anymore. And it's not that I think that we should enhance the idea of the um, in Danish we have a saying that's called øl, fisse, hornmusik. I don't know how you would say that in English, but it means beer and punani and partying. I
Mhm.
don't think that is the way for the man, but that is also part of being a man. There's parts of just being kick back, relax, uh, not being so uptight, not being correct, and the political correctness that creeps into this.
Mhm.
It it castrates, really it castrates men from just
Mhm.
being themselves. And once men stops being able to be themselves, just you know the mechanism between the mind and the mouth, when you start observing yourself 100% all the time, just try to be correct all the time, you lose any, in the eyes of the female, you lose any attraction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And
But
and
yeah,
and if
definitely,
and
it is the bad boys that that
yeah,
women are attracted to still, even
yeah,
though like you'll read every single day in the media about how men are being more vulnerable and such with their feelings and that kind of stuff. But that's not what women are attracted to at all. And
no,
men who do that, even if they do manage to land a partner, they will generally not be able to keep that relationship because there's just no respect in the long term. So
it seems to me,
absolutely.
but also that also comes from David Data, that the more that we look, the more that we behave the same, the more that we are the same, the less attraction, the less polarity, and
Mhm.
the easier it is. You just get a friendship, and who wants to live in a friendship? Nobody does. You want to have friends, but you don't want a romantic relationship that is just a friendship. You
Yeah.
need the attraction to keep together. And to some degree, that is, in my opinion, that is what is hurting both men and women. That attraction has gone because the polarity, the difference is not enhanced or is not
Mhm.
uh, uh, you are not allowed to be a feminine woman or a masculine man. We mock masculinity and we mock the feminine women that just wants to be feminine, be the beating heart of the family, that wants to take care of the children, who wants to stay home, make a loving home, make everything that makes safety in the family, emotional safety in the family, that nurtures also the heart of the man. uh, we just say to these women, "Well, why don't you get a career? You should be out, you should make money, you should be a boss." uh, that is the cultural thing that is going on. And the same for men. You should be a home dad. You should walk the kid in the trolley, drink your cafe latte in your flat
Yeah.
shoes.
Yeah. So yeah, Denmark has the world's highest female workforce participation rate. I can't remember the numbers exactly, but
Yeah.
it's amazing. I think now with the recent EU regulation that several months of paternity leave or maternity leave is now earmarked for the man, so you either
Mhm.
the man has to use it or you lose it. I think before that, it was like the average age was 10 or 11 months that children were put in full-time daycare with the state. But now it's gone even lower down. So now
Mhm.
my sister-in-law, she works in a daycare center, and she says like she's getting in kids 8 months old now. Very rare, like all the new kids coming in are about 8, 9 months old because for the guy has a job where his boss isn't happy about him
Mhm.
taking paternity leave. I think paternity leave can be a great thing, but I think the state deciding that men have to be the ones taking so much
That's crazy.
it just doesn't make sense whatsoever. And so what it means is that your people are getting forced into having to send their kids into full-time state childcare. And no matter how many pedagogues or how many employees you have in a daycare center, they can't give that love that a child needs that you can only get from your parents, right?
Of course
So,
not. A
yeah.
19-year-old with purple hair and a ring in every nose. I mean, they are not this. It's not the mother.
Mhm.
They don't have the feeling. There's not the connection. There's not what is supposed to nurture the child. I mean, they can take care of them, of course. And I don't. I'm all for equal opportunity. I mean, if women wants to work, I think, of course, go for it. Do whatever you like. But all choices bear a consequence.
Mhm.
And if I think to some extent most of us are not conscious about the choices that we make, so we end up in circumstances by the choices that we make that we are not happy about.
Mhm.
I mean, so it, it leads to the current culture leads to competition between men and women. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and uh, and that competition, because it also enters the home, it will be non-stop bickering, and you will have to downplay yourself to
Mhm.
keep the peace
Yeah.
because you are trying to be the same instead of being different.
Yeah. So this is, I think, why many people are going to like ancient traditions. And, we spoke about, both of us went through,
Mm.
all kinds of Eastern traditions first that end up in Christianity. But in all times past, we have this idea that people in times past were really stupid and uninformed. But actually, it seems like more and more like we're the ones who are just getting basic things wrong. Because in all times past, everybody knew that there were differences between men and women, and we appreciated them and we valued them and we cherished them actually. And,
Yeah,
and we realized that that's what created attraction. And so, and
yeah,
like it's that recognition of those differences that's a prerequisite for me to be able to love my wife, in fact. And
yeah,
today, any difference between men and women is automatically interpreted as some kind of oppression,
yeah.
some kind of like manipulation happening, or it's all bad. So we're trying to eradicate the difference of men, mainly just from first of all like making women as masculine as possible and
Mm.
degrading the feminine, as you were talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
Especially the role of the mother, which is the
yeah.
most important role in the entire of society. There's no more important role. It's the next generation
No,
is
exactly,
mothers. That child comes out of her body. It
exactly.
it sucks on her breast. Like
Yeah,
it's so important that the connection between, I work with guys and I can say like a lot of guys have messed up relationships with their dads, but we can fix that because they're just looking for another male strong role model, and we can fix that. It's a lot harder if they really don't have a good relationship with their mom. Like if they've never had connection with their mom, like there's just a basic sense of being in the world that's not quite there yet, about that
yeah,
kind of sense of security of being in the world. So mothers are just so vital, and
yeah,
they're amazing as well.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
most of
yeah.
us realize this. Um, so so that's what I think, like just this recognition of differences between men and women,
Mhm.
and appreciating those differences.
Yeah.
Uh, you were talking about how this idea almost seems like some kind of conscious thing. And for me, what it is in our efforts to get rid of all the religion in our society, religion snuck back in. And it's a really weird, puritanical religion that is really, it's devious and it's ugly and it's built on like, kind of like cancel culture, and it's very,
Yes,
very, yeah,
yes,
destructive.
yes,
But
yes,
it can only be seen as a religion, if you ask me, because it's
yes.
it's certainly not rational.
No, no, no. There's lots of new religions going on these years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the climate religion.
Hmm.
There's a gender religion.
Yeah.
There's the Marxism that supposedly has no God, but is the closest thing to an evil religion that we have going on these years. The Marxism thing, the equality before freedom thing that is going on. Equality before freedom, equity before freedom. It has the potential to subvert the entire Western society, the fabric of everything. And to some extent, in my most conspiratorial moments, I think much of what is going on is to create disturbance in society so somebody can take over power. I think there's some part of that going on.
Hmm.
We inject division between people.
Hmm.
We create tension
Hmm.
in areas that are vital to people's understanding of being in the world.
Yeah.
And the more tension and the more division.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you want to go out onto, we can try going to a little bit of dangerous ground here, Thomas,
Huh?
because what I see is a lot of division happening. And I'm
Yeah,
curious about whether the conversations you're having, there's several really big topics, I think, that have divided us in the last couple of years here in
yeah,
Denmark and I think around
yeah,
the world. I
yeah,
think one of them is COVID. Uh, in myself, a big thing that's impacted my circles has been the war in Ukraine.
yeah.
Um, and
I'm getting tired already.
you're getting tired
Yeah,
already. And then, of course, like Trump, Biden, that whole thing is something
mhm,
that we're obsessed with everything that's happening in America. So
yeah.
that's there. Climate change. Do you think that there's some kind of like clarity emerging from the men's movement? Or do you think that that's still just as fractured amongst the guys you've been talking to in Denmark? Yeah.
Uh, I think I think the men's movement, men that have worked with themselves, men that are not by inclination is a political creature. It's not on the red team or on the blue team, but has worked with themselves and understood that they have a blue team in themselves and they have a red team in themselves. They look with more clarity on the things that are going on these years.
Hmm.
Obviously, there are people that are, in American terms, are really conservative or Republican, and the other side that are more liberal.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's a growing conscious movement that understands that these things are meant to create division between us, and we as men cannot allow them to create the division in society
Hmm.
that they are trying to. I get it fully. I woke up to the political thing back when Trump came around in 2015.
Hmm.
Uh, at first, I was like, "How can Trump be president?" We knew him from popular culture. I hadn't watched TV for like
Hmm.
at that time for 11 years. I hadn't watched one single minute of TV, but I knew who Trump was, and I was just thinking, how can he become
Like that guy
president?
president. Yeah.
And the press was just nonstop going on 24/7 every day about how evil he was. He was like the
Mhm.
evil Orange Hitler.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I need to observe what is going on here because
Hmm.
uh, is America going to shit?
Hmm.
But the more that I looked at the Trump thing, and the more that I read about it, and the more trails that I followed, the stories that were written, the more I understood that it was not true what was written. It was just an interpretation.
Yeah.
Actually, the
Smokescreen, I
worst,
would almost call it.
yeah, actually, the worst interpretation you could ever
Hmm.
get from every story that was written,
Yeah.
and that just kept on going for the 4 years that he was president.
Yeah.
The same thing is going on now with the Ukraine Russia thing and the COVID thing. The COVID was I wasn't vaccinated.
Hmm.
I It's not I have taken every vaccination in all my life,
Yeah.
but once the vaccination became a political thing, Nobody wanted to take the vaccine when it was Trump's vaccine, but when it became Biden's vaccine, everybody wanted to take it, and you were evil if you
Oh, I
weren't
didn't
taking.
even know that.
Okay, and the shame and the guilt and all the stuff that was played around, getting us to take medicine that wasn't tested, that was not functioning, etc., etc.
Mhm.
Or we couldn't be sure. For me, that was more like no vaccine has been made that fast
Mhm.
ever.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll wait. Please let me wait. And
Yeah.
once they started to suggesting I should take it uh, as to be able to just go out on the street almost. Now I'm certainly not taking it. Exactly.
Yeah. I was actually in the beginning, I was like, okay, well, maybe I should just do this to kind of like
Yeah. But I
to
think
just because all the difficulty associated with it. And then they started pushing it so hard. I was booked and I canceled my appointment and I never got vaccine because I was just like, no way with if they're pushing it this hard. Then it felt really, really weird for me. And the
something
fact
else
that
is
they
going
got
on.
kids vaccine, it was just crazy, absolutely insane. And we
That
can
was
see
what, yeah. In my family, people were at each other's throats, also at my throat, especially because I wasn't
Mhm,
vaccinated.
mhm,
But once they got one step too far with the kids,
mhm,
people began waking up saying, okay, there's something wrong here.
mhm,
Stay away from my kids. I'll take the third shot, but my kids are not taking any.
mhm,
Okay,
mhm,
and then we could have a more nuanced discussion and say, okay, are you going to take the fourth shot? If
mhm,
your kids are having none, why
mhm,
would you? And then the more nuanced discussion started. But that is actually what we have lost in modern culture today, especially in the media. We cannot have a nuanced or we cannot have an opinion that needs clarification for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Everything has to be clear cut, black and white. You are either you for or against,
mhm. Yeah,
and it kills
yeah,
society. It kills what is between us. And as men, I think true masculinity
yeah, absolutely.
unites people, unites differences.
Yeah,
It, it creates peace between people.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's easy to see a lot of bad things happening. I'm
Yeah,
really aware at the same time, I had a conversation just I went on a hike recently this weekend with a bunch of guys from my church and it was great. And there were some of the younger guys, especially who had a really big need to talk about politics and to talk a lot of conspiracy theories as well. And, not
yeah,
even conspiracy theories, but just like real stuff that's really messed
yeah,
up. And I thought we found like we had then a conversation afterwards about like, guys, it's like we live better than pretty much the vast majority of people who've ever lived. We live far better than like even royalty lived not
yeah,
so long ago.
yeah,
And we have incredibly comfortable lives.
yeah,
The vast majority of people lived in like slavery and, much greater oppression. And so we,
yeah.
we have a lot of privileges. So it's easy to kind of, take this black pill and focus a lot on it.
Hmm.
And I definitely appreciate what you started off and framed that everything you said with like, you see in a growing awareness that all of this stuff is there to grab our attention and distract us and divide us.
Mm.
And what's needed as well is to, there are rights and wrongs in these conversations, but the it, the the higher perspective is that if your attention gets too much drawn into it, you've already lost.
Yeah,
So we need
exactly.
to, yeah,
Exactly. And I think that is the conscious man is not in is not obslugt, what's it called?
yeah, obsessed.
Obsessed about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's
There's a
not
war
drawn
on our
into
attention,
it.
and our phones are these tools that are like the foreplace of it, and the world's most talented mathematicians and psychologists are sitting
Yeah,
there working every day to exploit all the weaknesses in our
yeah,
psychology.
yeah, yeah.
It's tough work. I gave away. I dropped my mobile phone, my smartphone. I have like a push button phone now,
You for
because
real?
yeah, yeah, I do.
Wow, that's
I do have a
hardcore.
tablet
Yeah,
for stuff, but it's super just difficult to
yeah.
carry around with me. So
Mm.
I can't have this thing with me most of the places I go.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
but
I
I
have
can.
thought about it. I have thought about it a lot because I work in, as you can see, I have worked in creating creative and technical solutions for the web
Mhm.
for like since the late 90s.
Yeah.
And so I know everything that's going on, and I think if people knew the profiles that the big tech giants have about us, there would be a revolution tomorrow. I mean, if we knew what they know about us,
Hmm.
everybody would just take their phone and dump it in the ocean tomorrow. Tomorrow. But at the same time, I try to focus on the high side of. I wouldn't have met you. We
Hmm.
wouldn't be able to do the podcast. I'm in contact with beautiful people all over the world that I would not have a chance to meet or to speak with almost every day of my life. Um, but we have to get it out of the hands of the people that wants to use it against us.
Yeah.
Because you are completely right. It's used as a tool to hijack our focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's basically what it is, to make money,
Yeah.
and it's not used for good, in my opinion.
Not a lot of the time, not. Most new
Yeah,
technologies go bad in the beginning, and then
yeah,
sometimes, a lot of the time, that gets better.
yeah,
First we made nuclear bombs, then we started making nuclear energy, and so,
yeah.
like
Of course.
militaries are normally at the forefront of our research and development. But then things turn out, the internet came from the military. First, it was just like old porn, but now I think porn's actually not the most. It's still big, of course, and it's still destroying our youth, our young men, but it's not the biggest thing. Um, I want to get over to talking a little bit more about Denmark, and I was thinking maybe I should kind of start us off a little bit, and maybe you can
Mhm,
build further on what I've been
mhm,
saying, because I've been thinking quite a bit about this,
mhm.
a little bit, because what I see is that because of their ability to be really fast and dynamic, and their rootlessness, we're all obsessed with what Americans are doing because they're really great at like production and doing stuff quickly. And, there's just like so much happening, and it's a very big
Yeah,
market as well. So they have lots of resources. So we're just obsessed with Americans, and
yeah,
everything that's happening there. And it's terrible. It's terrible because I actually believe that's a very large part of the problem. So when we're looking at trying to find solutions, we're all looking to what the Americans are doing. And I
yeah.
actually think like the solutions are going to be more found here in the old world more than in the new world
The new
over there.
world. Yeah.
I actually think like the closer things are to Jerusalem, the more they're rooted, the more they're out in like the US and Australia or whatever it is. Like they're in Australia, everything's upside. They're standing upside down even. It's like things are
Mhm.
really crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
Like things are really mad there, and it seems like they really went crazy under COVID as well, right? Like they were putting people in camps and stuff like that. So I've
COVID
been
was
thinking
just.
about it. Obviously, one can say things about Danish history. We had some really crazy Vikings, like warriors, like
Mhm.
for 1,000 years. Like the Scandinavians were the most formidable warriors in the world. Before that, I think they were just killing each other constantly. And then when they kind of stopped doing that, and I've been studying quite a bit about like what was called the Varangians, which the Varangians were the Vikings who traveled east instead of to the west, down the Volga and the Dnieper rivers. They actually made it all the way down to Constantinople. They founded the entire Russian people. The Rus there's a guy called Rurik who was like a Sunayuth. He was like a southern
What?
person. He was the first prince of the Rus. They actually asked him to come and become their prince. That's what the story
Wow.
is told.
Wow. I never heard that.
And so the rulers of the Rus, the royal family, all the way up to Tsar Nikolai, with the Russian Revolution in
Mhm,
1917, they
mhm,
were of that kind of from that ancestry. And the Varangians were also the imperial guard of the Byzantine Empire, which is the longest standing empire. It lasted over 1,000 years, led from Constantinople. They all that time, then there were these Varangian Viking warriors who were like the core, the shock troops of that garden. Whenever there was like really an uprising that needed to be put down, then they would be sent out to them, and it was the palace guard of the emperor were also Varangians always.
yeah.
Um, so there's that, and then and what I find about the Vikings really interesting is that they believed that the way to Valhalla was a death in war and conflict, the warrior's death. So you had to find a hill worth dying on and stand firm on that hill to
Mhm,
defend it. You didn't
mhm.
just fight for anything, right? You had to fight for your honor. So
Yes.
it wasn't, from a Christian perspective today, we kind of see honor culture as very problematic, and of course that's true, but there's still a similarity in that like the Viking death in for something you really believed in is very similar to the way Christianity spread initially from, from the first apostles, was that they were all martyred. They were killed because of their beliefs. Every single one of the apostles of Christ, except for John, was martyred for his beliefs. And that's the way that Christianity spread, is because people saw these people. They were ideal citizens. They paid their taxes. They just loved everyone. They were handing out, feeding the poor. And then the Roman emperors were slaughtering them, one after the other, right?
Stop loving people.
Yeah, yeah. And they went bravely to death. Like, they weren't afraid of death as well, because they believed that Christ has conquered death, just as the Vikings weren't afraid of death as well. So, so for me, there's like an interesting mix there, a connection there that I think can really be a source of power. And I kind of feel like we've lost that in
I
our
completely
culture.
agree. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, but standing firm, it, it- people cannot people cannot even say what they mean anymore. As a commentary on social media, they are afraid to post their what they mean
Mhm.
about ordinary topics. I think you're completely onto something here, but also honor. Obviously, a man has honor. If you don't honor your ancestors, if you don't honor your country, if you don't honor your God, if you don't honor what is true,
Mhm.
what is there?
Mhm.
Uh, If we look at movies, if I to some extent agree with you on the American cultures being probably not what will save us, but they have made some great movies, and we are not looking at men in movies that doesn't have honor.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look at Braveheart or you look at Gladiator, that is men with honor, and we are drawn to that. And we cannot just say it doesn't matter. Honor doesn't matter to men. What? Of course it does.
Mhm.
Of course it does.
Mhm.
Um, is honor problematic? It can be, of course. Honor culture, like the Islamic, I think is what you're referring to. Obviously, there's lots of once the honor gets too much, if you slaughter your sister because she has kissed another guy,
Mhm.
obviously you're crazy.
Mhm.
But
But there's still women knowingly converting to Islam in Denmark today,
yeah, yeah,
because at
yeah,
least there's some men with some honor. So you have to give
exactly,
that course correction.
exactly,
At least they
exactly,
have some strength. At least they
exactly,
dare to stand firm in what they believe in. Like,
exactly.
they dare to be
Yeah,
men.
yeah, exactly. They're not just lying on their couch playing PlayStation, working
And
some
waiting for
meaningless,
the federal to
working some
spoon
meaningless
with
jobs.
their.
What? Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I think the weakening of masculinity is hurting men much more than we know, psychologically, also physically. Because, but you are also completely right. The world has never been, to some extent, better than it is now. We are helping more people
Materially,
out of poverty better. The people is better, or it's more comfortable than it has
it's
ever been.
materially more comfortable. There's more material abundance. But I also
Yeah,
think that spiritually, we've probably hardly ever been poorer.
exactly, exactly. Comfort. We are looking for more comfort, but more comfort will only hurt us. You also look at the curve for obesity, or if you look at America, you look at every Western country, obesity is just skyrocketing, and it seems like it will have no end. So now we are developing drugs to help people stave off the
Hmm.
extra kilos,
Yeah.
and we pretend at the same time. There's another thing in the culture going on where we pretend that it doesn't matter how much you weigh. You can still be the most beautiful girl alive, even though you're 130 kilos. Something has gone completely off the hinges in our culture. And I think at the same time as comfort is great for us, that we are insulated from nature, we are insulated from being killed because it snows, or because the temperature drops, or we're getting eaten by a bear. Because we are insulated, we have forgotten that there's a responsibility to keep the natural, what pressure the natural world would put upon us. For it's I'm not sure how old Homo sapiens is, I'm not sure about anything about human history, but let's say the scientific method is true. We have been around for 200,000 years in our current form. The brain has been the same, our senses has been the same, everything has been the same for 200,000 years. Evolution has created us into this being that has needs that have to be met for us to be psychologically, physically, spiritually aligned with our world. And if we just say, to hell with that, just give me comfort.
Mhm.
That's why I work out every day. I'm turning 50 next month. I work out every day to keep the pressure that the natural world would put on me if I was living in a natural system. The same with my food. What do I eat? I eat what I would more or less get from a natural environment. Fresh food, fresh meat, fresh fruit, water.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't think we'll
This,
go
this,
into it, but I actually go so far down the rabbit hole that I'd say the whole evolutionary story is a part of the smokescreen. You might find that extremist, but I've been looking quite a bit into it, and there are certain fundamental assumptions in the evolutionary theory. So for me, I would say no, evolution didn't create us. God created us, and He created us with these needs, and things do fall well into place that way. And make more sense.
Mhm.
And there's also um, an understanding. Um, it brings God a lot closer. It brings God a lot closer. So it's like the Bible it's not a scientific textbook. It was never written with that purpose. But I believe that the theory of evolution starts with the assumption that all explanations have to be naturalistic ones. It excludes the explanation of God, a God creator, and says, no, it has to be a naturalistic explanation. And then it starts looking at the data from that. And there, the logical conclusion obviously is that billions of years of evolution has created man to be what it is. The more I've looked into it, the more I actually don't buy it.
Mhm.
But I mean, that's probably a story, a conversation for another day. But I think
Yeah,
it's worth looking into if you're a
yeah,
Christian, especially, and
yeah.
and take that seriously. Then you don't have to buy into that all explanations have to be naturalistic ones. And you also don't have to buy into there's another assumption of evolution that is uniformitarity. So it means that all natural laws have always been exactly the same. Because according to the biblical story, not all naturalistic laws have always been the same. God can change things. God is all powerful, so He can do this, and so that's a part of our belief. And so you can toss out those two assumptions and say maybe they've been the same, maybe they haven't been the same. We can look at that with the scientific method. It's a scientific theory that they've always been the same, so we can
Mhm.
examine it scientifically, as we can also examine, do all explanations have to be naturalistic, or can there be things that come from a non-naturalistic perspective? And my life experience certainly tells me that spiritual explanations sometimes are unavoidable to explain things, because stuff just fits together too beautifully. Like existence is too beautiful and amazing to just believe in it. It's all just chaos. One of the fundamental laws of physics and the universe is entropy. Everything tends towards entropy. And there has to be something that counteract that entropy. And for me, that's God. That's what God is. That's what God is doing. He's
Yeah,
upholding it.
yeah. I'm completely with you. I don't have the language to express it like that, but the more that I have looked into my own belief, I'm certain that God is behind everything. It, and that also means the creation of me, or the creation of us,
Yeah.
the creation of the planet, the creation. It's not an accident. The end.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for me, part of the smoke screen
Mm.
is to make us believe that the nature of what a human being is just like something lower. It's from a monkey, but before that it was really just like, a fish, and then it was like slime, like that our essence is from slime. And that's part of the smoke screen. Because I believe that man was created in the image and likeness of God. And
Mm.
so there's something divine inside of me. There's something divine inside of you. And we all know this, because while I have no problem like killing a cow and eating it, or stepping on an ant, like that life, of course I don't kill it without, with just mercilessly or without purpose.
Oh no, I
It's
understand.
not I don't see it as murder. Whereas killing another human being, we all know that this is something that's fundamentally deeply wrong. And so there's
Yeah.
something divine about every single human being that's beyond price.
Yes.
And so I know this, and I act in the world as if it's true. And yet
Yeah.
I walk around and it's so it's so much in the culture. It's so much told us all the time that, you're just a monkey, you're just an animal. You're just, a you're just, some kind of product of evolution. It's all coincidence. It's all just chance. And the thing is that in evolution, you also just have this like blind faith that everything's just constantly getting better all the time. And so we don't have to do anything. We're all naturally going towards this kind of enlightened state, so it's going to take us beyond humanism as well. Like, so the next thing is post-humanism. So, because that'll be the natural next step of
Mhm.
evolution. So we don't even have to be humans anymore. We can recreate ourselves in our own image of what we want to
Yeah.
be. And
Yeah.
so we can do better than God, basically, right? And so and there's plenty of people out there, very powerful people, that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Exactly.
Doing all of our, I love science fiction, and all of our stories we're telling in the mainstream culture and science fiction today, it's all exactly about that. And it's really ugly. It's really dystopian. It's
Yeah.
really scary. It's really scary. So
Yeah.
people are getting prepared for this. And that's
Yeah.
exactly where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm completely with you.
So the man-woman thing, it's just the natural step. We've been liberated from all of our shared identities, and the next one that was there was like male and female, and after male and female's been liberated, we're liberated from that, then it's going to be the human identity. We all need to be liberated from that as well.
Yeah, but it seems like to me one of the fatal flaws of our time is the idea that every new idea that we get is better than the old.
Yeah.
And
It's
it
driven by our
obviously
art and our storytelling.
what?
It's
Yeah,
driven
there's a
by
lot
the
of,
art that we have. It's
yeah,
all about new. It has
yeah,
to be
yeah,
new and
yeah.
innovative and new, like challenging and skeptical and
And once you
critical.
start thinking just about it for like 5 minutes, you understand how ridiculous an idea that is. Because you can get a new thought, it doesn't mean that it's better than the old. And once you start, that was also what led me into Christianity, or led me on the trail of Christianity, was who am I? I mean, I'm just an average guy. Who am I to think that I'm able to put all the pieces of this great puzzle together better than the last 100 generations of people that has tried to formulate it into a book or something that conveys meaning, that has meant something for people for at least 2,000 years, but probably a much longer for many of the stories.
Yeah.
I, I may have my I may I may think too much of myself some days, but I don't think that much of myself any day. That
Mm.
I'm wiser or better equipped to make meaning out of this life than 100 generations of people before me. I mean, somebody has gotten better ideas than me. I'm just trying to pick up patterns.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's actually what the Bible and Christianity has brought to my life. Um, Patterns that work, patterns that has been time tested, patterns that I can just rely on, lean on,
Mm-hmm.
try to emulate.
Mm-hmm.
It came from my weight training. And, for many years, I was wondering, uh, from I was 30 to I was like 35 or something, I was running a lot and I was doing, the spinning
Mm-hmm.
on the bike.
Bikes, yeah.
And I was wondering, why the hell don't I get muscle on my body? Because it took me 5, 6 years to understand that I was doing the wrong movements to get the result that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so there are patterns that I can emulate to get results. And that led me from one thing to another to another to Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to put your faith in something. And so what do we put our faith in? That's, I guess, the story. It's like we know that the science of today, 150, 200 years from now, we're going to look back at it and think like, oh, that was quite quaint that people believed that. We think that of every previous period, and it's written
Exactly.
into the scientific method of these paradigm
Yeah.
shifts, right? So we know
Exactly.
that's the case. And so it's like, well, we need to find something that's stood the test of time, something
But
that's moral.
do you think, Paul, that there even is a human being that doesn't believe anything, that doesn't have faith?
Yeah, no, we have to put our faith in something. I think that people who say I don't have faith, I just have like rationality or logic. Like, you're putting your faith in rationality and logic, like that's like, how do you know that exists, right? If you're just a
Substitute
product of
God for it.
evolution, then we've just adapted to survive. We can't even perceive something like 90% of existence. Dark energy, dark matter makes up more than 90% of, actual physical matter is only a tiny percentage of what's around us.
Exactly.
We have no idea what's out there. We don't know what's going on here. This is way out of our range, right? And so now we're saying like, oh no, I believe in science and mathematics and logic. Like, what are those based on? What do they exist from? How do you know they're correct? How do you know it's not just something that's a construction in your mind? There's no way of knowing that.
Exactly.
And so in the Christian worldview, they're all grounded in God. God is truth. God is rationality. God is all of these things are grounded in the mind of God. And so we know that they exist objectively and we can trust them. But there's no way that I can possibly ground them if I have a naturalistic worldview. There's no foot I can stand on. I have to just assume it all and just say, well, it's pragmatically, it kind of works. I just kind of figuring it out as I'm going along. But it's like, is that what you really want to put your faith on? Do you really believe? Because then you're trusting your own mind more than like the sum total of human existence before you.
Exactly. But if you can get enough people, to believe that, they are a whole lot easier to manipulate and maneuver around and lead into consumerism as the new god.
That's what it is. Yeah. Well, one of them. There's many. They are legion. Thomas, it's been great talking to you. I really enjoyed it. I have a feeling we're going to have a chat again.
I really hope, and let me also extend the invitation the other way around. I think we should make a podcast here in my studio. That would be a longer one because I have lots of questions for you after this conversation. Maybe we can do it on the other end of my summer vacation. I'm going to Nordjylland for the entirety of July. So once I'm back and I'm turned 50, we can do a podcast then.
Oh, only
I would love that.
Itinerary. Wow, that sounds great. Yeah. Or perhaps you can even stop halfway on Foon. Bring some. We could do that. I have to admit, I try and avoid going to Copenhagen as much as I can these days. It's so crazy in there. I realized like I lived there for 20 years and like you develop these filters when you're in there and you come out here and like all the filters go away. And so you start seeing things, right? And like when I go back in there, it's like I feel overwhelmed. Like it's really crazy being in that city where you are.
Yeah.
So yeah. But
I'm not
sure,
sure.
I'd love to have another conversation, and I'm sure we can make it work, Thomas.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Good.
It's really been a pleasure speaking to you. I have lots of things that I want to say. So let's meet up again.
Here's the last word. What's the last thing you want someone listening to this conversation that you think maybe has found it interesting, valuable? I'll say go check out Maniphesto if you want to connect with other guys and have good conversations with them about straight and honest things. We don't have to worry about being politically correct, but we can be men. So check out maniphesto.com. We have these men's groups that people can sign up for. And I'll give you the last word to put in here.
So I have another podcast with my much better looking. She's not my wife. We have not agreed to how we are getting married, but we have been together for like 18 years almost. It's called Ild i Hjertet. If you're Danish speaking, you should go check that out. It has lots of great content that centers around what we have been discussing here. I think that is and the advice I give to all men all the time is you cannot neglect your body. You have to take care of it. And it's not because I'm a creative guy. I used to be very skinny, but being grounded in your body, you have gotten a body for a reason. You have to take care of it. You have to treat it like a temple while you're here. You can always turn into mind later. So
it's a good point. Yeah, we can talk a lot more about that. I have a good kind of Christian. I believe the whole of Western Christianity misunderstood the relationship to the body. So we can definitely talk about that as well. That would be fun. Yeah. Okay, good.
We speak again, Paul.
It's hard to stop. Sorry. Good.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Nice talking to you. Same to you. Bye, my friend.